Hello friends, and welcome to your little preview for 10-4. So today we are going to take the same skills that we have been learning and practicing the past 3 lessons, and we are going to be solving a couple of real-world problems today. So let's go ahead and look at our first example. 4 students took music lessons for a month. They want to know who spent the most money on lessons. Then they gave me a table with all of the information. I see the 4 students, Jessica, Cordell, Nancy, and Jay. I see the price of the lessons, the length of their lessons, the number of lessons they took, and then the total cost down here is blank. So I know I'm going to be solving for the total cost for each of these 4 students. So the very first thing I need to figure out is, what do I need to do to solve this problem? So I'm trying to figure out who spent the most money on their music lessons. So there are a couple of things that will help me here, but I have to go through and decide, does this help me figure out what I need or not? So first of all, the price per lesson. So will the price help me figure out who spent the most money? Well, absolutely. The price factors into that. So I know these factors are going to be important for me. Looking at my length of the lesson, 60 minutes, 60 minutes, 50 minutes, 90 minutes. Does that have anything to do with how much money it cost to take music lessons for a month? No, it doesn't. So this is one of those instances where they give you more information than they need to try to trick you. So that's why it's important to always think, what will help me solve this problem? So the length of this lesson, I can basically ignore. I don't need it. Now, the number of lessons. Will the amount of lessons, the number of lessons that they take, will that help me figure out who spent the most money? Absolutely, yes, it will. So I'm going to need to use the price per lesson, and then I need to figure out how many lessons each person did. That will give me my equation to figure out my total cost. So it's basically going to be the price times how many lessons, the number of lessons. So I'm going to have to solve this problem, price times the number of lessons, for each of my 4 students. So with Jessica up here, she paid $60 for her lessons, and she took 4 lessons. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to use the open number line strategy. So for Jess, I'm going to label it down here so that I know who I'm talking about. Now I've got 4 lessons, and each was 60. So here's my number line, trying to figure out how much money she spent. So before she took any lessons, she didn't pay any money. So for her first lesson, that would have been a jump of plus 60. Then she did another lesson, so that was plus another 60. 6 plus 6 equals 12, so that's 120. Now for her third lesson, that would be plus $60 more. Now she's at $180. And then her fourth lesson here is plus 60 one more time. So now she's going to be at $240. So I know that Jess spent a total cost of $240 for her 1 month. But I need to figure out who spent the most money. So I'm looking for the biggest total cost. But I don't know if Jess has that yet because I still need to solve this 3 more times. So let's move on to Cordell. Cordell only paid $20 per lesson, and he had 8 lessons. So I know that's going to give me an equation for 20 times 8. Now for this one, what I want to do is go ahead and use my equal groups. So I know he took 8 classes, so I know that I'm going to have 8 groups. Oops, that was kind of small. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lessons, and there were 20 in each. Now, I don't want to draw 20 dots in each because that would be a nightmare. So instead, what I'm going to use are my place value rods. Remember, you can always draw a picture to help you out. So I know that 20 equals 2 tens. So I'm just going to draw 2 tens rods in each of my lesson groups. So I've got the groups are my lessons, and then my rods are my cost. So now to find my total cost, all I have to do is see, okay, well, how many tens rods were there in all? So I'm just going to count by tens as I count my tens rods. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. I'll go ahead and label that. 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160. So I'm going to go ahead and put 160 right here. Now next up, I've got Nancy's lessons. So how much did she pay per lesson? She only paid $10, but she had 9 lessons. So for this one, I'm gonna do 9 times 10. So for Nancy, that's 9 lessons times $10. And I'm gonna skip count by tens for this one. 10, 20, 30, and I know I'm gonna skip count 9 times. 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. So Nancy spent $90 on her lesson. And then last but not least, we have Jay. So we've got $40 for his lessons, and then 7 lessons in all. So his equation would be 7 times 40. For this one, I'm going to use the basic math facts that I already know to help me figure out times 40, because I already know 7 times 4. 7 times 4, I know, equals 28. And whenever I'm multiplying by a multiple of 10, I know that all I have to do is move that 0 over here and slap it on the end. So now I'll take that 280 that I found for 7 times 40, and I'll fill it in right here. So to find my total cost, what did I have to do? I had to multiply the price of the lesson times how many lessons, and I had to remember that I didn't need to worry about any of this. I could just ignore it. Then I had to compare my numbers because I technically haven't answered it yet. Who spent the most money? Well, I know that most means biggest. So I'm looking for the biggest amount of money here. And if I compare all of these numbers, 240, 160, 90, and 280, I know that 280 is the biggest number. So who spent the most on lessons? Jay did. So my answer would be Jay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next one. Now you will notice that there are tables in both. You will be solving for these multiplication tables as part of your lessons. All right, my next problem is Mrs. Pierce is making muffins. She is choosing between 7 or 8 batches. Also, she's deciding if she should use 40, 50, 60, or 70 chocolate chips for each batch. She is using a table to help her decide. So part A asks me to fill in this table, multiplication table, and then part B asks me a question. She uses 480 chocolate chips. How many batches did she use? How many chocolate chips were in each? So as I fill out this multiplication table, I'm going to use whatever multiplication strategies I feel most comfortable with. So remember, you can use repeated addition if that makes sense to you. You can use those open number lines. You can use those picture representations. Whatever helps you is what you should do. So my first strategy that I'm going to use is just going to be skip counting. So here I've got 7 times 40. So I know that 7 times 40 is kind of like 7 times 4, and then just with a 0 slapped onto the end. So I'm going to use skip counting by 7s to help me figure out my answers. So I've got 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, and for that 7 times 7, I of course have my favorite number, 49. So now all I have to do is factor back in that 0, so I'm going to multiply each of these by 10. 7 times 10, 70. 14 times 10, times 10, times 10, times 10, times 10, times 10. Now I'm going to take these facts that I skip counted out, and I'm going to put them into my table. 7 times 40 was 1, 2, 3, 4. So starting here with 280. Then I've got 350. 7 times 60 gave me 420. And then last but not least, 7 times 70 gave me that 490. So I'm going to use a different strategy for my second one. Here I've got 8s, and I've still got those same multiples up here, 40, 50, 60, and 70. But this time, I'm going to use my groups. So I'm still going to be thinking about it in the same way. So here, I know I'm working with 8s. So I'm going to draw 8 circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, for this first batch, there were 40 in each. So here, I would put I know that 40 equals 4 10s. So I'm going to use 4 10s rods to help me figure it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm just going to go back and I'm going to count by 10s as I count my 10s rods to see what 8 times 40 is. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160, 170, 180, 190, 200, 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, 260, 270, 280, 290, 200, 300, 310, 320. Boom. So to find out my 5s, I could do the same thing and I could just add a 10s more and I could recount, or I could use repeated addition at this point. So here, let's go ahead. I know that I would be adding a 10 in each, which means that I'm going up by 80 every time. So here I could do 320 plus 80. 0 plus 0, 2 plus 8 is 10, 3 plus 1 is 4. So this answer is 400. Now this next one is really easy for me to do in my head because 400 plus those 8 more 10s would be 480. Now 480 plus 80, I can't really do in my head very well, so I am going to go ahead and squeeze it in over here. So I've got 480 plus 80 more. 0 plus 0 is 0, 8 plus 8 is 16, 4 plus 1 is 5. So I know my final one is 560. Now next for part B though, it says she used 480 chocolate chips. Then it asks me two questions. How many batches did she bake? And how many chocolate chips did she put in each? So I'm going to use the information that we put in our table to help me out. It says she used 480 chocolate chips. So now I'm going to go through my table and say, okay, well, where do I see 480 chocolate chips? No, 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 no. Da-da-da-da. Yes. So how many batches did she choose for 480? How many chocolate chips in each? Those are really my factors here. So to find the factors for this, remember, I would go all the way down here to my row and then all the way up here for my chips. So now all I have to figure out is which one stood for my batches and which one stood for my chocolate chips. If I go back to my word problem, she was choosing between 7 or 8 batches. So I know that 8 is my batches. So that's 8 batches. And then how many chocolate chips did she put in each? Going all the way up, that would be 60 chocolate chips. Don't forget, friends, if you ever don't understand anything, you can always send me a message or let me know, and I'll try to help you in any way that I can.